National Organization for Marriage is a fantastic organization we had the privilege of being allied with, and just last June I got to participate in their March for Marriage in Washington, D.C. Several thousand people showed up to demonstrate their support for marriage, marched from the Capitol to the steps of the Supreme Court of the United States, where we expect another case next year, where we hopefully will be involved in that case, deciding the important issue of marriage. Well, unlike Josh Duggar, I don't have 19 kids in my family, but I tell people I actually have 20. They just came in 2 bodies, and one of them was my son, who counts for 19 of those, if you ever had a son like that. Well, it's great to be back in the state of Iowa. I'm a native of Iowa. I grew up in Fort Madison, Iowa, and I know there's several folks from Lee County here. Glad to see you here. It's always great to come back and be encouraged by people that are so deeply committed to the values that made and continue to make Iowa great. Douglas Adams said, "There's a theory which states that if ever anybody discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable. There's another theory which states that's already happened." Well, these are definitely bizarre and inexplicable times, and Iowa has not been exempt from that parade of bizarre assaults. And I have to tell you, coming back to Iowa isn't always easy, as I've watched the forces at work to destroy the state that I love. In the name of progressiveness, the time-honored values of marriage, family, and hard work have been redefined and replaced with counterfeit marriages, social re-engineering, and the deliberate loss of religious liberty. This is bizarre and inexplicable. In a state whose motto is "Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain," we've seen those who would exchange our liberties and take away our rights to advance their agenda that can only lead to the ultimate destruction of this great state and great nation. The good people of Iowa have been disenfranchised and marginalized by unelected judges who have attempted to redefine and rewrite the laws of nature and marriage, and legislators who refuse to let the people to decide this important issue. They have lost their way. They have sold their birthright for a bowl of self-indulgent soup. Dwight Eisenhower described it this way. He said, "A people that values its privileges more than its principles soon loses both." That's why this banner is so important, leading with principle over politics. If we do not restore the time-tested principles that lead to prosperity and security, we will soon lose all. Do we really prize our liberties? Are we really fighting to maintain our rights? There's been a lot of references to the Declaration of Independence because it's such an important reminder, because it made clear when it recognized that our rights are endowed to us by our Creator. These rights are inalienable, which means they do not come from men. They're not parceled out by our governments, and they cannot be taken away from us by governments or courts. When courts overreach and governments overextend, we must stand firm, and we must resist their attempts to take away our God-given liberties. For if we don't fight, we are simply forfeiting. We already see the fallout of these fallacies of freedom, as freedom of speech is being eroded and freedom of religion is being attacked. We are told that if we say that marriage is the union between one man and one woman, that this is hate speech, and they'll gather outside and remind us of that. And yet we'll defend their right to speech out there. But for us, no speech for you. So much for freedom of speech. We're told if we want to operate our businesses in accordance with our faith principles, that we cannot, that we must forgo our religious liberties if we want to be in business. Or as one judge put it, it is the price of citizenship. So much for religious liberty. Ronald Reagan famously asked the question in the 1980 election, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" And while he was focused primarily on the economic issues of the day, we can ask that again today in a much broader sense. Are families stronger today than they were 4 years ago? Is marriage as the best place to raise children by a mom and a dad more celebrated now? Are you more free to live out your faith in public, in school, and in business? Are you more confident about the values that are being taught to your children and grandchildren in our government schools? If you answered yes to any of those, come see me because I want to live in your neighborhood. I don't see it. It's a bizarre and inexplicable time. But the question is not all gloom and doom. The question is there hope? Yes, there is hope. There's hope for a brighter future, hope for a better life, hope for a culture that celebrates life, marriage, and family properly understood. There's hope for rights of conscience and for religious freedom. And I'm talking about real hope and real change. How do I know there's hope? Well, one reason is because of all the folks you've seen on the stage today. We are so blessed to have great leaders, to have the Iowa family leader, and folks like Bob and Chuck that are leading the stage. But more importantly, the reason I have hope is because I can look out and I can see you. Because of your presence, your faith, and your hope, and because we all place our hope in a sovereign God. But along with your dedication and your involvement on behalf of your state and for your nation, that is the key to a vast future of hope. And we have hope because if we stand together, we can and we will win. Because if we win, everyone wins. But if they win, everyone loses. And never ever forget that truth always triumphs. And while these are bizarre and inexplicable times, sometimes a look back at history can also give us hope for our future. Someone once observed that the only thing we seem to learn from history is that we don't seem to learn from history. But I think that if we look back on an example of our 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, the first Republican president, we see an example of what can happen and what we can accomplish if we stand firm. You know, the Republican Party was created, and I understand it has its genesis here in the state of Iowa. Wisconsin claims fame the birthplace of the Republican Party, but if you're pro-life, it was conceived here, so life began here. It may have been birthed in Wisconsin. But the Republican Party was created to confront what they called the twin relics of barbarism, namely the barbaric practices of slavery and polygamy. And the Republicans sought to advance the truth that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with these rights, recognizing that slaves had human rights and were entitled to human dignity, and to defend the time-honored principle that marriage was between one man and one woman. And today we have similar twin relics of barbarism to combat, but instead of the slave who was treated as non-human, it is the unborn. And the fight against the redefinition of marriage has taken on an even more destructive and bizarre form. But fight we must, as Lincoln did, as he led our country through the Civil War. You know, between the time that Lincoln was elected and sworn into office, the South had left the Union, and by the time he was inaugurated, the Civil War had begun in full flame. The nation was divided, and many, including some in Lincoln's inner circle, believed that defeat was inevitable. They had lost hope. Yet even with those challenges, in 1861, Lincoln penned an address to Congress in that cold December winter. His remarks were simple and clear. A portion of our people, he said, have been engaged in an attempt to divide and destroy the Union. But then Lincoln took a broader view. He said the struggle of today is not altogether for today. It is for a vast future also. With a reliance on providence, let us proceed in the great task which events have devolved upon us. So despite those defeats on the battlefield, both political and military, Lincoln was able to look past the present struggle to a vast future. He had hope. You know, this afternoon, we face very similar challenges to what we've seen in history and what Lincoln faced. We're a divided nation. Divisions that paralyze our government and fracture our families and undermine our hope. With court sanction, we've seen the killing of more than 57 million unborn children that we've been told are unhuman. We've seen marriage redefined by unelected judges, such as the ones here in Iowa. And we've seen some of our friends abandon their posts on the battlefield, even joining those who oppose our values so they can remain popular and relevant. But not you. You're here, taking a stand. Thank you. If we stand together, if we engage, and if we persevere, we too will see a vast future. We will see that the many difficult struggles of today will give birth to a bright and promising tomorrow. And there's another reason for hope. Because even in the midst of these battles, there are many that we are winning. This past year, Alliance Defending Freedom had the privilege, by God's grace, to secure the right of government bodies to open their sessions with prayer. Government officials across our land now have the confidence to say no to those radical groups when they try their worn-out tactics of fear, intimidation, and dissemination to try to deny our constitutionally protected right to pray. Our attorneys, along with key allies, also defended two family-owned businesses, Conestoga Wood Specialties and Hobby Lobby, from being forced to violate their faith, to fund abortion-causing drugs in their health insurance plans, and to be able to operate according to their religious values. Don't we want more businesses to operate according to those values? We were also involved in the case that struck down the Massachusetts buffer zone law that would prevent sidewalk counselors from providing care and life-saving information to abortion-minded women. Nationwide, ADF has been pursuing the abortion industry and pulling back the curtain on their fraud and abuse. And we're pleased to announce that last year, there were at least 87 abortion clinics that closed nationwide. Resource centers in America than abortion clinics. Not just starting on the list, there are many, many more victories that we have, by God's grace, been able to see out there. And if you want to learn more about this, come join me down at our booth downstairs. There's a pamphlet called The Fast Future, and it talks about some of those cases, so you can be encouraged that when we stand together, when we persevere, and we engage on the side of truth, and that's truth with a capital T, we can and we will win. George Orwell said, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Let's start a revolution. Let's keep telling the truth. Let's keep standing. Keep engaging.